I've read the Cato Institute's immigration report, and they outline all the failures he had across his entire presidency, and that he finally cracked down at the end. Is exactly what I'm saying.
No. Okay, you didn't read it, because here is one of the main takeaways. It is literally on the first page of the Giga report. You just said that the Cato Institute report said that he only did it at the end. That is not true. Let me explain
higher
something.
Higher total number, but similar percentage means what?
Oh my
it means
God,
the other side of the equation increased in kind.
Let me explain to you very simply, because you need baby terms. You need baby terms. Retardspurg. Never unban bad faith.
What up? So I'm definitely not sympathetic with a lot of Gibbs's core points on the why, but I do agree with him that like the deportations, even of like the non-criminal immigrants, are good.
Okay.
Not necessarily because I'm like fucking get them all out, but because I'm like a Southern California Republican. So like a lot of my friends have like parents who self-deported when Trump got elected. Like they downloaded the app and they self-deported because they were just like, yeah, this is it. But a lot of my like Mexican friends, you know, who do have legal families, who have moved more conservative as of late, have moved that way not because of this cliche like, oh, legal immigrants want to pull the ladder up behind them, or like they don't want illegal immigrants like taking advantage of the system that they actually went through. It was more because they realized that Democrats, especially in California with like sanctuary city laws and shit, what California basically did was instead of making meaningful concessions like in the Trump era, the first one, border wall funding for 500 more immigration judges. Instead of making concessions like that, they instead were like, no, we're just going to insulate illegal immigrants in California and places like that from immigration enforcement so that they build the most robust lives possible, so that essentially it just looks really bad and painful to deport them, hoping that that's just enough of a deterrence that we can get amnesty eventually. So they basically like held illegal Mexicans hostage instead of actually trying to help them out. They were just like, yeah, we're just gonna sanctuary state you into a point where you build lives and have jobs and have families here, completely knowing that like any president at any time could come and do what Trump is doing right now, so that we can eventually just force them into amnesty maybe later.
Okay, like, so I mean, at least for the the 500 immigration judges in exchange for the border wall, if I'm not mistaken, that was a part of a whole package. I don't believe that was like just like a tit for tat, but maybe I'm wrong. If you have that, I would love to see that, because I would disagree with that. Obviously,
yeah, it was Lindsey Graham's first bill, not the one that he co-wrote, because the one he co-wrote was a Dreamer bill, and it wasn't like a path to citizenship bill. I think it was in like 2017, and then he brought it to the table like 2 or 3 times, but Democrats basically refused to vote on anything. Nancy Pelosi said it. She said, like, as a group, we are not going to vote on anything that has border wall funding in it. Like, Democrats were obstructionist on principle on border wall funding, and Trump was injecting on principle, if he has any, injecting it into every bill. So, you could argue that it was like a mutual thing, but really it was like Democrat obstructionism has been a problem in terms of paths to citizenship, because what they want is a zero compromise path to citizenship bill. What Republicans want.
How do you feel about the one proposed under Biden?
That one was more of a punt. It was like, we're not going to compromise, but we're not going to refuse to compromise. What we're going to do is we're going to just throw all of the power. We're going to punt all of the power to the president. We're just going to assign all of this power to the president. They essentially were just like, the president gets to decide when the border shuts down. We're going to give him that power, and we're going to really remove the handcuffs on when he can use that power. He's going to get to do this on a whim. He's going to get to do this on a whim.
I'm talking about the expansion of funding for Border Patrol, for immigration judges, and for securing the border. Yeah, that is. Yeah, like you believe that was the summation of that bill?
Yeah, like the points of that bill that could have been considered compromises with historical like Republican objectives didn't actually compromise on them in legislation. They just punted them to the president. So they were like, That's the reason. That's one of the reasons that the Republicans, not Trump, but like the Republicans that were not supporting that bill from the beginning, weren't supporting it. Was they were like, you guys realize that they're doing this so that basically anytime a Democrat is in charge, we just get a complete pause on immigration enforcement because the president gets to decide when any of this happens, whereas that's never been the case before in our immigration law.
Can I ask then why there was sufficient votes to be able to pass it amongst Republicans, but then Donald Trump threw his weight behind a no, and then individuals who were party to those conversations with Donald Trump said that the reason why he wanted it to be a no was because he wanted to win during his presidency?
Well, so notably, the only people that claimed that they had the votes were people who co-wrote and co-sponsored the bill from the outset. I don't trust any of these bills with bipartisan in the name, because they also said that about the quote unquote bipartisan infrastructure bill. They were like, we actually had the votes to pass it already, but we made these concessions because as a sign of good faith to Republicans. And then like every Republican came out and was like, no, the fuck, that did not happen. We were not going to work with them on this unless they made these concessions.
It had nothing to do with the name of the bill. It had everything to do with the actual Republicans who wanted to vote on it. It was like bipartisan.
Yeah, there were some Republicans, but there weren't enough, right? Because
I'm pretty sure there was enough.
No, the only one. Well, I can't say no definitively. The only ones who claimed that there were people who co-sponsored and co-wrote it and never relented in their support initially. There was never anyone who came out and said, I was going to vote on this, but I'm not now. Even none of them even did so under like a lie, saying like, oh, I've been alarmed by the conversations and they're actually passing something different than I thought. Like just straight up, nobody came out and said, I switched my vote on this.
I believe there were Republicans who stated that they were for this bill, and then afterwards they did not vote on it.
There were Republicans. No, the only ones that came out and said that like we had votes and then we didn't have votes anymore were people who were going to vote for the bill and did vote for the bill.
Okay. I mean, I'd have to double check that, but I don't.
And yeah, and regardless of the support, the fundamental fact of the bill was that all of the things that were kind of concessions to Republican objectives, right? Like that's what they kept touting was you can shut down the border. We're letting you shut down the border. We're letting you allocate funds to a wall if you want to. But it's like, if your president is the one that's in charge, and then when our president is in charge, we can basically make it as though all of these compromises do not exist in the current immigration legislation. And
so to my knowledge, that wasn't the only concession. A very large, quote unquote, concession was a dramatic expanding of Border Patrol, a significant increase in the funding for Border Patrol. So this would provide new equipment and personnel to be able to actually secure the border.
But I'll give credit to Democrats on this. The Democrats have always been fine with increasing the budget of Border Patrol. They've always been down. They prefer maintaining and refurbishing current barrier. Republicans want more wall. Democrats want amnesty in exchange for stronger border. Republicans don't want amnesty. They want to essentially allow people to process. They historically have wanted to allow people to process some sort of long-term amnesty via employment in the United States, and like a way to refresh a work visa even if you stayed past it without getting deported first. Like there have been historical concessions kind of made on both sides hypothetically, but there's always the end aim of the Democrats has always been amnesty. And then
what do you
as
mean
of
by
recently,
amnesty? Are you trying to say like
Democrats largely have wanted amnesty for illegal immigrants currently residing in the United States that haven't committed crimes? That's been something since the Obama era.
What, like legal process for people inside of the United States that haven't committed crimes? Is that what you said? Well, also somebody in my chat brought up some of what they believe to be the concessions. $440 million to hire immigration judges, $210 million for marshal detentions, $204 million for FBI DNA analysis for funding for immigration flow monitoring, detention, oversight. Automatic removal powers. DHS gains authority to summarily remove or bar entry to non-U.S. nationals within 100 miles of southwestern border. Encounters over 4,000.
So the last one is a semi-concession, but again, it's the DHS, which is directed by the president, and a Democrat president could just let that not happen. The DHS will have that removal power, but the president can tell them not to use it. First of all, and second of all, everything in the first message is not a concession. The Democrats have claimed to be pro more immigration judges. They have been pro better detention facilities so that the kids aren't in cages anymore.
I would say that that's if
law
that's
enforcement
not
funding. Like
if that's
these
not
are
a
concessions.
if that's not a real concession, then Republicans don't actually care about the problem. If all you care about is building a wall, you don't care about actually increasing.
A concession
hold on. If you don't care about increasing funding for Border Patrol, if you don't care about increasing funding for judges, then you don't care about illegal immigration, because these things have been shown to reduce. These things have been shown to reduce. It's not conceding if you
support that already, though.
Illegal crossings and illegal migration is these things, not just building another wall so that way people can dig under it. The reason
we're disagreeing on what a concession is. Hold on, you're saying something that won't matter when I reply. I promise you, it won't matter.
Hold on. Okay, I know what your point is. A concession is an appeal to something else that somebody wants, not the reasonability of what they want.
No, that you don't want. Like it's only conceding if you don't already want it.
I understand that. However, that does not matter in the context of things that will not actually help illegal immigration. There are things that Republicans want that would actually help curtail illegal immigration. Building more of this wall is not going to really help illegal immigration. That's not really going to do it. There was multiple studies conducted that not really. There was multiple studies that were conducted that show the blatant ineffectiveness of increased border wall, one of which being the vast majority of people who come here illegally do not actually come here illegally. They overstay visas. That's what they do. And so what is a wall going to do to stop that? It's not going to stop much. You know what will stop that?
I get it.
Immigration judges.
I totally agree. What I'm saying is immigration judges isn't a concession, because when it's already a bipartisan agreement and policy, you can't then go in and say, well, we conceded on that. No, you didn't. We all just wanted that. That's like saying, well, we want oxygen and you want oxygen, so we're conceding. It's like, no, you die without it as well as I do.
That is the point. We don't then those Democrats, and I would argue under this circumstance as well, we don't care about those concessions because that's wasting money.
Well,
I'm not going to waste money
that
do that to just do nothing. I'm going to instead spend my money wisely and actually allocate money to be able to reduce illegal migration, to increase interior detentions, and to get people processed legally more quickly. That's what I'm going to spend my money on.
Sure,
I'm not going to waste taxpayer dollars on something that doesn't
concessions work. First, there's two parts to this. One, wall is not the only thing that Republicans want. Republicans also don't want states to be able to resist giving over criminals to federal authorities.
Okay, that's ridiculous, because that's in our Constitution, states' rights. I'm not even sure what you just said is true, because Republicans are supposed to be all about states' rights versus Democrats are all about federal. The reason why sanctuary cities exist...
You can be pro-states' rights and still be against sanctuary cities. Yes, you can.
Because, can you tell me...
That's like saying you can be I can be for gun rights and not want people to shoot people,
because
right?
you don't understand the law. What is the law?
I do understand the law.
What is the law that gives sanctuary cities the ability to be sanctuary cities?
Bro, okay, I can agree with a state's rights and not agree with how they use them. You understand that, correct?
No. What is the basis with which they... No, in order for...
A right that I agree with is being used in a way I don't agree with. And so I would like the Democrats to concede that they will not use that power in that way in order to get concessions on immigration.
And then by the same stretch of what you were using before when it comes to the president, what happens if a Democrat just says yes and then just goes back to doing it? You can't enshrine that into law. You can't be against it. It is the state's right to be able to not interact with federal law enforcement or federal immigration authority if they so choose, based under their state's rights. You can't force them to. That's just not going to happen. And you're never going to get a shaking of hands that every single Democratic state from now until the end of time is going to cooperate entirely with the federal authorities on immigration.
It doesn't have to be.
To be clear, nor should they.
Well, they should. If you take immigration seriously, and this is my problem, right? Is like, on one hand, Democrats will say we want illegal immigrants out, and we hate that Trump obviously can't get his numbers up with just criminal illegal immigrants because there aren't enough of them. But then on the other hand, you support California and other states doing these things that are what make it hard to target only criminal illegal immigrants.
How do you know
the
what
hardest
I support
illegal immigrants.
California to do? Or are you referring to somebody else? How do you know what I support?
You just said, I think they should do that. Like you just said it.
No, what I said is that
they should.
They should they should be able to be independent of the federal government, is what I said. That it ought to be that the states should have the right to be able to be independent of the federal government on immigration, and
Yeah, but
especially
you also
in
said
this
they shouldn't
context.
make a handshake. You said states should not make any deals wherein they say that they
No,
won't
I
do
said
that.
they won't. That's what I said, is that they won't.
Okay. They can, though. And
They
if
can,
they won't,
but
that would be the refusal to make
next
a
time
very material concession that
No,
would really
that's not
help.
a real-
That would
that's not
really
real.
help ding the illegal immigration problem, especially the criminal illegal immigration
I
problem.
pinky promise. You think the Republicans are going to take? I pinky promise to work with the federal authorities on immigration. And
No,
this
not
also,
pinky promise. What you do is we do this all the time. You create tandem programs between federal and state agencies, and then the funding that the federal government will pass down to those state agencies in exchange for that cooperative program is subject to their abiding by that program. So they would say, we're going to work with California on getting criminal illegal immigrants out and leaving non-criminal illegal immigrants alone. Now, our promise to not do ICE raids on non-criminal illegal immigrants and our funding that we will use to fund this program and give to California to save them money on police forces is contingent upon them cooperating with us on anybody who has a violent criminal record. Because right now, California will only do it if you have a crazy long criminal track record. Even parole officers for violent criminals are not allowed to report to ICE that somebody violated their parole for a violent crime. So someone who has committed a violent crime, didn't get deported, got imprisoned, got out, and is committing crimes again, they still, in California, cannot cooperate with ICE. That's insane.
My argument against the states cooperating with ICE specifically right now, but as a general rule, but specifically right now, has to do with rogue actors like the president is right now, removing people's right to due process, and him historically having done that. That is the basis.
Yeah.
That is the basis with which I would say the resistance to this type of thing must be met. I totally support the states in resisting ICE coming into their communities because it is being done illegally. And that's why
I'll agree. I'll agree for sure.
But you understand that if the states have all of their money tied up in mutual programs, that is basis of which is on immigration, they wouldn't be able to do that. They wouldn't be able to realistically resist without taking massive hits to their economy. That's why I believe that it's totally legitimate for them to be independent.
Sure, but any federal and state program, their ability to abide by it relies on the federal government abiding by law. I understand if Democrats were out right now saying, listen, we actually do want to end sanctuary policies. We want to come to a state and federal deal where we don't have to do this anymore, where we actually help and facilitate ICE targeting the criminals in our communities so that we don't have to spend time to pursue them. But we just aren't going to do it under Trump. You get somebody else in charge and we'll do this. I would totally be agreeing with Democrats right now, but they're not. They never want to release the sanctuary city policies.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with the sanctuary city policies, depending on how they conduct themselves domestically. I might have some issues with California's use of it, maybe, but I legitimately haven't looked through all of the different things that California specifically does. But I know for a fact that this context for immigration and how it's federally enforced, this is a good thing for the separation of powers. Like you said earlier, just a second ago, that all of these laws are put into place under the precept that the federal government follows the law. Maybe these specific laws, but no, that's not. Our country is fundamentally built off of the idea that we could realistically have a tyrannical president. That is what the Constitution and stuff is set up to do. I would be suspect to the idea that these various laws that have states and federal interests intertwined economically don't have similar provisions for rogue acting a federal government. Or
yeah,
president.
no, 100%. That's why California could never, like you said, they couldn't, even if they wanted to, surrender their right to be a sanctuary state. But what they can do is they can come to a deal that is beneficial to both parties where they help ICE and ICE helps them. And they do that in so many other ways with the federal government that could be compromised if the federal government started to act illegally, right? Like they're running into that problem right now where Trump's threatening to revoke education funding for them. Unfortunately, that happens, but that shouldn't keep you from making any deal ever. I totally agree with you. again, if they were out here in the streets just being like, get a different guy in charge and we'll totally work with you, but we can't risk it with Trump specifically, I would be backing Democrats on that point tomorrow.
I don't,
but they're not saying that. They're saying forever we will be sanctuary states. The state will not ever be a non-sanctuary state.
I personally don't see any issue with that. You would need to show me specific policy that they have that would make that illegitimate. The idea that a state would exercise its sovereignty over expelling their own populations of people, in this instance, non-citizens, makes total sense to me. Why would a state cooperate with federal authorities when they can attempt to exercise the discretion over who they deport themselves? You would want to do it yourself. Why would I be beholden?
Sure, but we don't do it ourselves either.
Well,
I agree with that.
So
I
that
agree
would
if
be
they
the
were
argument. The argument wouldn't be to remove sanctuary city status. The argument would be to actually enforce your the rules or moral guidelines for who should or should not be deported. It wouldn't be an argument to get rid of sanctuary cities. You should have your power. The whole
point of a sanctuary city is the whole point of your sanctuary city. Sanctuary city isn't like an actual like legal designation. All it means when they say that is we are going to go out of our way to make it harder to deport people in our criminal justice system.
More specifically, it's just I'm not, to be clear, I don't believe that's the case because I don't believe it's legal to obstruct a federal law enforcement and their legally authorized duties. It is just that you will not cooperate with federal authorities when they attempt to.
Yeah, which means, but if the people that they're talking to haven't committed a federal crime, then ICE can't do anything about it. If you're a government who represents your people in your state and you have an opportunity, the reason I would say it's unreasonable to be a sanctuary state the way California defines it is when you are protecting in law criminal, illegal immigrants, even those who violate parole, even those with violent offenses, unless they have like a crazy long violent crime record. The reason I would say that's unreasonable is because why are you spending more money to keep those people within when you could just cooperate with ICE on those cases and get them out? Like
sure,
violent illegal immigrants.
We could probably agree with that. As I stated that entire time, I agree with the idea of getting violent illegal immigrants out of the country. I don't want violent people here. If it was somehow moral and justified and you could deport U.S. citizens who were violent, like slapping grandmas on the subway, I'd get them out of my country. You think I want Harvey Weinstein here? Let's get him out. Let's have a CCOT be CCOT's problem. But unfortunately, we can't do that, right? Well, and morally, we can't do that, right? If we were a country of 90% undocumented immigrants, we'd have like an insanely clean, insanely civil country because we could just get rid of every single person who is not.
And I don't want to get rid of all of them, right?
I would want to get rid of pretty much everybody who's like causing significant violent crimes. I would want to get rid of.
Yeah, but these are people who are illegally in the country. Like we can get rid of them, and the only reason we don't is because California will not. If they have a repeat violent criminal who they know is an illegal immigrant, they will not tell ICE about it. That I would say is unreasonable. I would say if you are someone who claims to take criminal justice seriously.
Yeah, if I would have to take a look at the specific laws, but I imagine there's some California immigration laws that I would probably disagree with. That is not an argument to get rid of their sanctuary city status. That's an argument for their sanctuary city status to be better utilized. Because if I was ever the governor of a state, I would, or mayor of a city, or any of those things, I would want to exercise essentially all of my autonomy under the Constitution. I would want as much power to be able to run my state, run my city as I see fit and not be beholden to some potentially tyrannical leader like we have right now.
Sure, and some of the ways that you see fit would be right and some would be wrong, right? Like if California only exercised the sanctuary city things that your chatters, some of them, broken toilet seat in particular, think are the only things that sanctuary city policies do, which is they're just not going to ask during stops and they're not going to help raids. If that was all sanctuary city actually meant, like it really wouldn't be a problem. The issue is California, like the California Values Act and other laws like that, they specifically say like we when we have criminals in custody who are violent criminals who are subject to deportation because they're violent criminals and they're here illegally, we will not tell ICE about them. And not just we will not, right? It's not like every individual police officer in California is just taking a collective stand. No. Police officers, parole officers, a lot of them want to get these guys off the street. They will lose their jobs if they try because they will have violated the law. And so it's like, that's a problem. Like, to me, that's not a legal problem, but it's unreasonable.
It depends on the specific provisions. I'm just looking up very briefly, it's very cursory, the California Values Act that you specifically mentioned, and it seems to detail that it's a prevention of mass deportations, not just like of, hold on.
That's what they describe it as, but no, it limits cooperation.
While broadly restricting cooperation, the act, it does allow for cooperation in cases involving violent or serious felons, particularly those convicted of state prison felonies or certain high-level misdemeanors. Prison felonies.
Yeah, so if you read the letter of the
crimes.
Yeah, if you read the language of the bill and then you look at its enforcement too, they don't do it to one-time offenders ever. They don't do it to two-time offenders, almost ever. The only time you'll start to do it is third-time violent offenders, which is like, that's like, we shouldn't be waiting until someone's subject to life in prison to deport them. That's the problem. You and I agree, it's a level at which they're exercising this quote-unquote sanctuary city. It's not, I'm not one of those conservatives who's just like, sanctuary city is buzzword I don't like. It's a scale. If California was just like, listen, we got a lot of illegal Mexicans and we don't want to spend the time and money when they're contributing to our economy to, like Broken Toilet Seat thought it meant, we're not going to walk up and ask them their immigration status and we're not going to help with raids, that'd be totally fine. But the issue is, their actual enforcement of these sanctuary city laws comes to the point where first-time offenders, even violent offenders, never get reported. Second-time offenders almost never get reported. And like, it's only third-time offenders and beyond that you'll start to report. And it's like, two-time losers is where we're drawing the line. Like, that's crazy.
It says local law enforcement can choose to notify ICE or Border Patrol of your release or transfer if you have certain convictions, such as state prison felony convictions, most other felony convictions within 15 years, higher level misdemeanors within 5 years.
Yeah. So that's if you've committed a crime and you have then committed a second offense, right? Because that's prior convictions. So that's not the crime you just committed.
Release or transfer.
Yeah, but remember, it's if you have convictions. So when they're taking these people into custody, these people aren't convicted yet. They're talking about prior convictions. So this only applies to second-time offenders.
No, this would apply to anybody with a state prison felony conviction. At least according, I can grant
convictions.
No, it doesn't say prior. It just says
but it necessarily means
conviction.
Yeah, but it's local law enforcement, right? So they're only interacting with someone who already has a conviction if that conviction was in the past, because by the time someone is convicted, they're no longer interacting with law enforcement, they're interacting with the judicial system. That's why it says within 15 years for certain, within 5 years for others. It's talking about prior someone who's picked up for a crime
or released,
is in custody of law enforcement. Yeah, so they're now in custody of law enforcement again, which means they did something again.
Where are you getting the again? It seems to indicate, so the indication to me is if they're released or transferred for a state prison felony conviction or most other felony convictions within 15 years or a higher level misdemeanor within 5 years, then they can be ICE can be notified. Yeah, that's what it seems to say.
Released or transferred released or transferred is in the context of the custody that they are in at the time in which this law is being executed upon. So that means when they are in
the conviction,
they're in law enforcement custody. No. Because if it was upon conviction, right, why would they say 15 years or 5 years? Because they're not getting
after release.
This is, so if they're already in California prisons and they're being released, 5 years? They would never be released 5 years later for a misdemeanor. This is specifically trying to cover people who have committed second crimes.
After the misdemeanor.
Like, you can look up the stats on how many first-time violent offenders get deported from California. It's basically zero. Like, it just doesn't. I promise you,
I can believe you when it comes to, like I said earlier, I can believe you in the case of how the law is enforced. I'm saying based on how it's written, it seems not crazy. You could just talk about how it's enforced.
This is SB 54, still. Values Act.
Yes, the California Values Act. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. But yeah, and so what our core disagreement I think is going to be is where that line is that states it is you. I think we'd agree that they don't need to give up their legal right to do it, and I don't think they even could if they wanted to. The problem being, I think we have differing ideas on where the line is where it's reasonable to exercise that right. I don't think it's reasonable for even like a one-time violent felon to ever refuse to contact ICE about it. That's an illegal immigrant who's committed a violent felony in the United States. That should,
yeah,
Lauren Southern got barred from Australia for a video.
I would say that, Australia is different than America, but I would never suggest that be the
going
case
that far. But
for
you see what I'm
America.
saying.
That's a very different situation. But I would say if you're a violent felon, it should probably be. I guess maybe it would depend on the violent felony, but like most violent felonies, like 99% of them, I would agree with informing ICE or cooperating with federal authorities on your deportation.
Yeah. That's my thing is like if Democrats start making concessions like that, I think they would get more headway in the law. And the reason why I don't disagree with the deportations is I don't think that deporting people now is the bad thing we're doing to them. I agree that illegal immigrants in the United States, the ones who don't commit crimes and the ones who just live lives and just wanted to be here legally but just fucking couldn't, I think a bad thing happened to them. I don't think it's the deportation. I think the deportation was the necessary end everybody understood was going to happen at some point. The bad thing that happened to them was the Democrats doing everything they could to make sure these people could build as deep of roots as possible so that it would be as painful as possible to remove them, specifically so they could be used as, political ammunition for them.
Wait, do you disagree do you disagree with the idea of sanctuary cities not cooperating with federal law enforcement to deport non-violent, tax-paying, undocumented?
Do I disagree? So my line would be the same. My line would be the same. I think they should cooperate to the extent that I don't think they need to like participate in the raids or like stop people in the street to ask them their immigration status. But I do think if federal law enforcement comes in and is just like, hey, what do you know about this guy? And they should probably give them the information to facilitate those deportations. Because I don't think we're going to get meaningful path to citizenship legislation until the economic impact of the deportations happens. That's why I think if I had a prescription, what I've told friends is it's just like when we talk about their families.
Why should they do that?
I think people should self-deport so that America feels the economic impact and there's actually a robust path to citizenship made. It would happen very quickly, I think.
No, I think that'd be pretty ridiculous. You're telling people to give up their lives and livelihoods in order to get like an own on the economy?
No, not an own. It's the short term versus long term. I don't think it's about an own. I don't think it's about points. I think it's the only way it's the literal only way we get what we need in terms of path to citizenship.
I completely disagree. I think there's an absolute opportunity to be able to get more immigration judges and path to citizenships without all of these undocumented people just self-reporting.
Well, immigration judges isn't going to make the path to citizenship is the issue. The path to citizenship needs to be created, right? There are backlogs of cases that will help a lot of these immigrants, but a lot of illegal immigrants are here in sort of limbo where they haven't filed for asylum. They're not on any sort of path to citizenship, but there's no reason why they shouldn't be a citizen. Like they've been here, they've been working. Like to get legislation that says like if
a really big issue.
It is 100%. It'll help, but it's not going to be. People are going to be really disappointed, I think, by the impact on both sides. Once those immigration judges, we need them. I agree with them. If there was a clean bill for 500 immigration judges, I would have no critique of it, and I would say everyone should vote yes on it. But it's not. You're not done at that point, is what I'm saying. We need more.
No,
I want more immigrants.
Sure. You're not. You're not done. But this is like a very. This is a way better solution than just having millions of undocumented people just self-deport and then have to start like a new life in a separate country. Like,
no, and I get it. Like it's super unfair. What has happened? We agree.
It's not even unfair. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think it makes sense to do. I think there's better ways to handle that.
There may be and there may not be. I don't think there's any way to say yes or no about it, because the Democrats have been telling them that for decades now. They've been telling them, just keep under our wing here. Trust me, no one can ever break this wing. You're safe. Keep building lives. Keep getting more and more attached. Keep rooting yourself deeper in, so it's more and more painful to leave. And eventually we'll get what you need, which is amnesty, essentially. Most of the illegal immigrants in California need amnesty because they're not on a path to citizenship. Even Obama wasn't able to get a amnesty. Well, they don't like the word amnesty. Even he wasn't able to get a path to citizenship for anybody but Dreamers. Was the only one he was trying to get path to citizenship for. We need a lot more than that. And unfortunately, the only way to guarantee that you're going to be able to reap the benefit of new citizenship paths is to self-deport. Because if you wait until you're deported, you will be barred from coming back into the country. That's
I mean,
that's
no,
the bricks of it.
I don't feel like self-deportation, like, oh, wow, if I get deported, then I won't be able to come back. Yeah, but if you self-deport, you're losing your livelihood. And maybe you have like a kid that's a U.S. citizen. It's not uncommon. In fact, I would say it's a fair number of them do, who is a U.S. citizen. And what do you do with them? Do you take them with you? Do you like try and send them off to like a distant cousin, hand them off to like a neighbor? Yeah. Like you're talking about a very serious choice here that I don't think people should agree. Just. Well, yeah, I think that choice has way too many consequences and way too many people for that to be realistic. I think instead figuring out ways to get concessions either out of the Trump administration or something else is pretty important. Like right now, it seems like Trump is posturing to give concessions towards undocumented people in agriculture. I'm sure there's a lot of undocumented people who are scrapping to try and get a job on a farm right now.
No, 100%. That's what I'm saying is like, if the reason he was pushed and nudged that direction was because people were telling him how economically catastrophic it would be. And I think, again, that kind of proves a little bit of my point. I understand your point. You're like, I think there is a less painful, slower way of getting it done.
To be clear, I believe that it is being like the display of Trump backing off is a part of it. There is.
I hope. But he's not backing off enough on things like the tariff thing that was also retarded that he did with the tariffs on countries that aren't China. It's like, yeah, he backed off partially, but then there's still some lasting fucking tariffs that are still in place. And I think it's going to be the same thing with immigration, where he might half back off for like farmers and hotel workers. But at that point, I'm like, maybe we need to get a little bit of community solidarity here, because I don't think only Mexicans who work in farms and in hotels deserve the right to stay. You know, I don't know. It's tough because I know I'm asking for a lot, right? And I'm asking it from a very privileged position, but I'm asking it as someone who's seen. Not asking it. I'm giving the recommendation as someone who's seen this pattern of these Democrat states promising the world and then not making any concessions to give them the world. And it's like, at the end of the day, California's put itself in a position where if it wants to make good on its promises, it needs amnesty. That's the only thing that will make good on Californian promises, which is the people who are here paying taxes and working with families can stay here. Most of them need amnesty. They are not on paths to citizenship.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry. Do you disagree with the idea that people with families and stuff should be able to stay here?
No, I super agree with it. I think my immigration law would basically be you come in on a work visa, and if you work the same job for 5 years straight, you're a citizen. That would be my rule. Like, I'm very open with citizenship as long as you make them prove in action their earnest desire to assimilate and work in the United States. I don't think we get there until the full economic impact of them not being here is felt. That's why I'm fine with, and we need to enforce immigration law. When my immigration law does get enacted sometime in the progressive future, right, we will still need to be deporting people who violate it. We can't still have states that are saying we're not going to help you deport people who violate the immigration law.
So is our principal disagreement about whether or not illegal immigrants should self-deport?
I think our big disagreement is the bad thing that was done to these immigrants the false promise?
I beg your pardon?
Or is it the deportation?
Thank you, Admiral Gibbs, for gifting a sub to Angel of the Odd. Thank you, Admiral Gibbs. Much love. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I disagree with most Democrats in the conversations I've had with them, because most of my fucking friends are softy libs like you. Is they think the bad evil thing that's happening is deporting all these innocent families. I don't think that's the bad and evil part. I think the bad and evil part was forcing these people, was like essentially pushing these people into this place where they're knowingly building lives and digging in deep roots that the California government has always known any president at any time could come in and rip up. That's what I think the bad thing was.
I mean, they don't know that because their sanctuary city status helps insulate them from.
It helps insulate, but they know that at the end of the day, ICE still has the authority to come in and deport whatever illegal immigrants they want.
Sure, yeah, they do. Yeah, that's fair enough.
And that's what I don't like. And I'm not blaming the Democrats for it either, because the Republicans have contributed to it by not doing anything about it in their presidencies. But
the problem is that when it comes to even your own stated policy that you would prefer for immigration, the 5-year work stuff, that is far more of a Democrat policy and something that Democrats have been pushing to do. But the solutions, the real world tangible solutions to illegal immigration and undocumented people coming into the country or misusing the systems, is from the Democratic Party. But
I think we disagree on the concessions. Like, I think that the Democrat states should concede to get amnesty, and they should make deals that make it really difficult for them to refuse to cooperate with immigration authorities. I think Republicans need. Bad. Well, then if you're a Republican who wants more strict immigration policy, why would you concede on less strict immigration policy if you know even that policy won't get enforced in the states where it matters the most? Right? Like, what incentive is there for you to concede at that point?
Because we had attempted to pass bills that would give more funding to be able to enforce the border protections or whatever that we have. The issue isn't
but the border crossings were never the biggest problem, right? You and I agree on that. Like, the border crossings were never the biggest issue.
Even the democratically opposed solutions include a robust database in which federal authorities can use to be able to monitor illegal immigrants, to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, we're talking about a significant increase to the infrastructure to be able to monitor and track illegal immigrants and how they and what they're doing. Like, the idea is a massive increase of interior detention.
It's a decent increase.
I mean, it's a pretty big increase.
And we don't want interior detention necessarily. That was always a stopgap. Obama started the big interior detention. We wanted them out. Like, that's the concession we need, is we want the Democrat states that we're conceding to help us get criminal immigrants out.
Well, in order to get them out, you have to detain them.
Yeah, but if they're already detained in these blue states, we want the blue states to tell us. Like, we want them to, if we're going to concede on looser immigration laws, we want stricter enforcement.
What is the looser immigration law that you're conceding to? Because a border wall isn't a looser immigration law.
It is, because the border wall only applies to, like, looser immigration law and border wall really don't have to do with one another, right? Yes, looser immigration law means who legally gets to come in, right? And Republicans have consistently said, if we want to increase the people that get to come in, you have to increase our ability and your cooperation with us on keeping the ones who aren't allowed to come in out. Otherwise, it doesn't matter what we concede to you. You're going to let in whoever you want anyway.
And that infrastructure is necessitated through the monitoring of illegal immigrants and increasing interior detention, which has happened.
And cooperating with local law enforcement when these people are caught committing crimes. Like, it's both and.
We need both. Say, you're harping exclusively on, like, California.
$200 million on a database. Well, $200 million in a database is not enough to increase our immigration enforcement. It's just not going to help that much.
Well, then why did our immigration enforcement spike so dramatically under Biden?
Because Biden went beyond his executive power, even according to the courts, and shut down the border. And our immigration enforcement,
but even independent
about the deportation.
Even independent of that, there was increased interior detention. Shutting down the border wasn't the exclusive thing that he did.
Because there were increased crossings. There were more people to detain. What do you mean? That doesn't mean he improved the enforcement.
It wasn't at a per capita level. It wasn't at the same level. He tripled interior detentions. We didn't triple the amount of people coming across the border.
There were 9,000 daily crossings at one point, and I think at Trump's peak, it was in the upper threes. Yeah.
don't believe that the interior detention tripling there was in correlation with those crossings. In fact, when the interior detentions tripled, it was a reduction in crossings.
It wasn't, well, it was a reduction in crossings once he shut down the border.
Yes, I know he shut down the border and there was a reduction in crossing. I'm talking about when he tripled the interior detention. I don't believe that was per capita with correlated to the increased amount of crossings.
It was almost identically correlated to the increased amount of crossings.
I'll take a look.
I think you're underestimating how much the crossings increased under Biden. It was insane. It was like unprecedented levels of crossings under Biden.
Crossings increased, yeah. I mean, in large part because there was, more economic opportunities as well as COVID was dying off. And there was a massive increase in that was happening for sure. From fiscal year 2021 through February 2024, there were about 9.4 million encounters, which is more than 3 times the number under Trump. Wait, encounters are different than illegal crossings. You understand that, right? When they're saying encounters at the border, they're having encounters with illegal crossers or those attempting to cross illegally. Correct. That doesn't mean that's encounters, though. That's, you understand, that isn't a 3x increase in illegal crossings. But say 50% of border encounters are illegal crossings. If you have 3 times the border encounters, then you're going to still have 3 times the number of illegal crossings. No. You need the number of illegal crossings because you can't just go, we have triple the encounters, therefore we had triple the amount of the illegal immigrants coming across into our country. That's not what illegal immigration is. It could be possible in theory, which it, even to my understanding, wasn't the case. It isn't the case that it could be the case that he just tripled the enforcement of people coming across the yes, that's why I said it wasn't the case to my knowledge. There's just no evidence for it. Like, he didn't triple the number of Border Patrol agents. Like, how would he have done that? Border Patrol agents, but he didn't triple it. Yes. I don't know if you have your hard of hearing or what, but I said multiple different times, it is not that that increase in encounters was correlated or has no correlation with the increased rate at which people come across the border. You can't simply say there is 3x the border encounters, therefore there is 3x the illegal immigration. Sure, but it's better than just saying that. Well, it's definitely more evidence than you have, like, because you're saying there is 3 times the number of internal detentions with no corollary in terms of illegal crossings. I never said that. What I'm saying is, there did I say that? Again, you're hard of hearing. I never said that. You said it is not correlated. You said it is not correlated to the number of illegal crossings. No, I said it's not per capita. The identical. It's not the exact same. It's not like it's almost exactly the same. Okay, show me the illegal immigration. The numbers we have. No, you're using encounters. That is retarded. You're spurging. You don't use encounters. You would use the amount of illegal. You're doing the thing that the RFK Republicans do, bro. Like, this is the closest. This is the only number they use. I'm getting at. No, you're retarded. We can estimate how many people illegally cross into the fucking country. How do you think we get those numbers? Groups them together. They use encounters. They always use encounters. They always have used encounters. You can use encounters, but there's also numbers for illegal crossings. No, estimates for illegal. Yes, there is. They file them as encounters. Yes, there is. There is numbers for illegal crossing. You don't just look at one source and just go like, cool. You're looking at one source for data. No, it is not. Source. It's Customs and Border Patrol. They're the only source. That's not the only source that we have. I'm just curious. Do you think independent, like, reporters and independent reporting, do you think that there is no estimate that they can use to be able to understand how many people are illegally coming across in the country? You know, the independent reporters, they get their numbers from Border Patrol. And do you know where else they get their numbers? No, they don't. They don't only get their numbers from Border Patrol. Oh my God! You're fucking retarded. You can get numbers for illegal crossings beyond just Border Patrol. You can look at numbers coming from Mexico. You can look at numbers from that they have, or various countries, whatever country you're trying to be. You can. They have the U.S. border. Dude, I'm actually curious. Do you think that Mexico has their own Customs and Border Patrol? Yeah, for people crossing into there. How would they know? How would they know who came across to our side of the border? You're
They're
looking
not
at a
interacting
single.
with
You're
them.
looking at a single government agency, and you're saying that that is the only information that we can have. You cannot correlate it with independent research groups. You cannot correlate it.
That's what we-
with independent intelligence.
That's
you cannot
what we do for
correlate it
everything.
with other. No, we do not. We do
When we
that
talk
with
about
literally
crime
nothing.
data,
No,
yes,
we do
hold
not.
on.
We
When
do
we
that
talk
with
about crime
literally
data,
nothing.
we use the FBI. When we talk about disease data, we use the
No, we
CDC.
don't.
When we talk about border patrol and counter data, we use the CBP.
Again, you're retarded. What we do if we're talking about crime data, we look at the FBI, we look at local law enforcement, we look at state law enforcement, we look at many of these different issues. We look at specific local reporting as well, because local reporting might indicate that there's a lack of correlation between the reported numbers on the way up in the
Is there any
FBI
reporting
database
like that
and stuff like that
for the border?
Yes,
Is
there
there
is
any
reporting.
like
There
that?
is reporting
No,
for
what I'm
people
saying-
coming across the border into various places. There
That's
is
not what I'm
independent
saying.
reporting.
I'm saying, is there reporting saying that, oh my gosh, there is this massive increase in percentage of encounters that are legal entries, but illegal inadmissible entries as opposed to illegal crossings? Because those are the only two things counted under encounters, by the way. Illegal crossings and those trying to enter legally but deemed admissible. Is there reporting that just says, don't worry guys, I know the encounters have tripled, more than tripled, but we know from our on-the-ground reporting that it's actually a bunch of legal entries that were inadmissible. I guarantee if that was the case, there would be widespread reporting of it across at least liberal media, if not the moderate media.
What are you saying? What are you trying to say?
You're saying sometimes to counter the narratives of these state agencies, we look at independent reporting that say, oh, we're seeing a different thing on the ground. I'm saying, is there any independent reporting saying there is that for some reason under Biden, there was enough to account for a 3.5-fold increase, enough legal but inadmissible crossings to account for that entire increase, or at least a sizable enough portion of it for this correlation not to be valid?
Are you hold on. What you're asking for is there independent reporting to illustrate that during the tripling of the interior detention, that wasn't specifically just because more people were coming across the border? Is that what you're asking?
No, no. All encounters are people coming across the border, right? They're either crossing illegally or they tried to cross legally, but they were deemed admissible. So those are like asylee claims that are denied up front. Is there any reporting saying that the percentage of legal inadmissible claims skyrocketed under Biden? Is there any reporting of that?
I would,
because that's the only thing
that wouldn't correlate with what I'm talking about.
It's the only thing that would make my correlation non-applicable, because there's only two things counted as an encounter.
The only thing that would make it not applicable would be a lack of correlation between the date at which you're referring to the tripling of the border crossing and the tripling of the interior detention, or even a general increase of the interior detention. I believe that
so what I'm saying
there was an increase in interior detention that wasn't correspondent with the border encounters.
Well, I mean, it was identical with the border encounters. You said three times the number of border encounters tripled.
No.
That's the correlation.
No. When do you think that was? That's my problem. When do you think that was?
What do you mean, like the specific line spike?
Yes, the specific line spikes. As per my understanding, the specific line spikes with interior border encounters with interior detention isn't perfectly correlative. That has been my point. Your argument, you're just like saying things where you're like, well, it tripled in encounters and tripled in interior detention. Therefore, there is no increase in immigration enforcement. That's a ridiculous thing to say.
You
need to look at the times in which these things happen.
Yeah.
You need to look at the times in which also increases and decreases in interior detention happened. You can't just go, well, they both tripled, therefore.
The increases in encounters happened, and then the increase in internal detention happened for a couple of reasons. One, you only detain people after they've been encountered. Two, it takes a couple weeks for those numbers to be reported. And then three, Biden did, as the encounters stayed awful for a really long time, start to detain more people. But that doesn't mean he gets credit for detaining more people.
What are you saying? I'm sorry, say again? I don't know what you just said.
So the spikes are correlated, but they're not matching. So the spike
just give me the graph.
The spikes of encounters at the border. Here, I'm not looking at a graph. I'm looking at like month and date names.
Sure.
But let me see if I can find a graph.
It doesn't. Yeah, you don't have to do a graph. Just send me the month and date names.
I found one. It's okay. It's on the similar article there. This is BBC. So. But they're still using CBP data, so it's fine, even though they're dirty Brits. Also, yeah, Danabo, you should self-deport because you're European. But yeah, as you can see, the spike is pretty consistent for the encounters, but it slowly goes up. There's spikes in kind of just fall of 2021, another spike in summer and fall. It's basically how it works every time, is like summer and fall is when a lot of the migrations happen because they're not
Wait,
doing
where's
as many of them in the winter.
interior detention graph?
Oh, well, I thought you were looking at the interior detention graph.
No, I was
giving you
asking for a...
All right,
okay.
hold on. Let me get the interior detention. They follow... Detentions almost always are going to follow directly after the spikes of encounters because you only detain people you're encountering, obviously. But
that's not true. You can detain people that overstay a visa.
The only graphs I'm seeing for Biden right now are year by year. So let me try to find one that breaks it down further than that, because year by year it looks pretty much identical, but that's not enough specificity. Maybe this one. Nope. But yeah, generally, what I'm trying to say is Biden wasn't this like hyper aggressive immigration enforcer. Biden detained a lot more people because a lot more people crossed, the same way Trump detained a bunch of people and a bunch of people crossed, and Obama detained a bunch of people and a bunch of people crossed. He finally shut down the border at the very end of his presidency unlawfully, yes. Because
and do you think he just did that randomly for no reason? Why do you think he did that if he doesn't care about the border?
He did it for an election.
You think he only did it for the election?
Yeah, why else would he have only done it at the very end, right before the election, instead of doing it the entire 3 years he had record?
I don't know.
Crosses?
Why did he also not use that on the political campaign trail almost at all?
He did. They were constantly talking about how the Republicans are the real obstacles to immigration. We are making immigration a winning issue for us. That was like the whole bipartisan border bill shtick that they were pushing.
Oh, wasn't the bipartisan border bill is different than him shutting down the border? The bipartisan border bill the bipartisan border bill was, yeah, part of it, but that's the bipartisan border bill. That's not the. I can just show you. I can just tell you to go to Biden's Twitter around that time, but he cites that, you know, we're the ones taking the border seriously. The Republicans want to play political games at the border, but we're here actually getting shit done. Yeah, that was over the bill, not over him shutting down the border.
No. It was in the statements he made the day that he signed the executive order.
Yeah, probably the day that he signed the executive order. I'm talking about, you said it was a political stunt. Why didn't I hear this every day on the campaign show? I shut down the border. I shut down the border. I shut down the border. It just wasn't the case.
He wasn't saying anything on the campaign trail. They barely let him out of the fucking cage, but he was.
I know you're trying to sway over that, but you need to actually answer the question.
No, what I'm saying is you're obfuscating because you know what I'm saying is true. Is that they did use it for political gain. The Democrats were saying we shut down the border. The Democrats were saying we have lower border crossings right now than any time under the Trump presidency. Like, this was getting used. You're just like, but Biden specifically wasn't saying it every time you saw him in an interview, so he wasn't using it politically. Like, that's BS. I haven't done one cringe MAGA thing to you, and I don't know why you're doing like the establishment Democrat thing to me. Like, we know he was using this politically.
Establishment Democrat thing? What are you talking about?
This idea that Biden was this like record fucking enforcer of border policy, dude. Like, we know this isn't true. He didn't do great at enforcing border policy or immigration policy. Like, that is just statistically the case.
He seemed to do pretty well. Do you trust the Cato Institute? You trust the Cato Institute?
I like the Cato Institute. I trust their data. Their assumptions are a little.
They literally
they're
did
open
a report.
Borders, so
they did a report on Biden and said that he had a significant crackdown on immigration. If I link you their whole massive giga report, would you read that?
I've read the Cato Institute's immigration report, and they outline all the failures he had across his entire presidency, and that he finally cracked down at the end. Is exactly what I'm saying.
No. Okay, you didn't read it, because here is one of the main takeaways. It is literally on the first page of the Giga report. Okay, it's literally on the first page.
Yeah.
Biden immediately started increasing expulsions first day in office.
Yeah. He started increasing expulsions. That's not them saying that his entire border policy was great the whole way through.
It's a whole document on the things that he did that were right on border. And you just said that the Cato Institute report said that he only did it at the end. That is not true. Biden increased air removal flights by 55% over 2020 levels. Biden tripled interior detention, increased border detention 12-fold.
Yes.
So hold on. Is there a situation where it was 12-fold that you can correlate there? Illegal immigrants had already increased 1 year high before Biden entered office. Like, the Cato Institute breaks down this big lie that Biden was totally incompetent when it comes to immigration.
This is where I'm saying their data is correct, but their analysis is going to be pro-Democrat on the border because they are open border.
It's the Cato Institute. They're like a conservative think tank.
Hold on. Show me where they say that border crossings more than tripled under Biden in that report.
I believe it says expulsions did not deter migrants even among demographics universally expelled.
Just show me where they say it tripled. And if you can't find it,
I'm pretty sure it says
to me
somewhere.
Why.
Let's see.
Yes. And then scroll down and look at the article that's linked at the bottom too. And just tell me if I can trust Cato's numbers, but me saying I can't, I'm not just going to go with all of their interpretations. Tell me why I might think that's the case.
Wait, I'm curious. Even if they tripled, why did border detention increase 12-fold?
Look, scroll down.
No, I'm asking
one
you.
number
So just before we move on, why did they say increase border? You said that you trust their numbers. Do you believe that border encounters increased 12-fold?
No, because border detention isn't border crossing encounters.
Correct.
It's not those same people.
So
it's not the same people group.
Why did border detention increase 12-fold?
Because it's not the same people group.
Okay, that's not an answer. Unless Biden was increasing.
What I'm saying is I don't need to explain that because border encounters are not the people that are going to be detained at the border.
Yes, I understand. So why was Biden detaining more people who were crossing the border?
More people were both at and crossing the border when Biden was president.
Yeah, but not by 12-fold. Not by 12-fold.
Just scroll down to the bottom bullet point real quick.
Sure.
Because again, even they
Title
almost
14
paint
not
a
only
decent picture.
banned asylum for people who crossed illegally, but also
the bottom bullet point.
This is the bottom bullet point.
No, the stats of the stat bullet points. Sorry.
Stats.
It talks about how Biden's best he managed to.
Page.
No. Okay. Give me this link real quick. I'll just read the one I'm looking for because it's hard to scroll. Just link it to me. Because what it'll tell you, it refuses to talk about how many more people crossed under Biden.
I'm pretty sure we read this and it did. I'm pretty sure we read it and it actually did. I'll take a look though. So when you actually look at who removed a higher percentage of border crossers, it's Trump. And even Cato admits Biden removed a similar percentage of crossers as Trump's 4 years. So Biden wasn't this guy who just came in and upped enforcement as a percentage, right? He had more people coming in. If you have a 12-fold increase in one detention, hold on. This is a retarded thing to say. Go ahead.
No,
go ahead,
it's
Land.
not.
Your 5 IQ is about to rub together on this one. Go ahead.
No.
Yes,
really.
I'm not being bad faith
to you. Yeah, I'm not being bad faith to you at all.
You are.
So if Biden...
Wait. I'm not going to let you get away with that. You just told me that the Cato Institute report said that Biden did fuck all until the end. And the literal, first 3 bullet points disagree with you. So you just lied about reading the Cato Institute report.
Because this is why,
just to be clear, you are being bad faith.
I didn't lie. Oh my God.
Yes, you did. Okay. Does the Cato Institute report state that on the first day he expanded enforcement or not?
I am going to pause what I'm saying and just continue it when you're done.
Yes or no? Okay. Because you are being bad faith.
If Biden increased interior detention by 3 times and increased border detention by 12 times, but he still only removed a slightly lower similar percentage as Trump. What does that tell you?
That tells me
the source
Biden
of
did
the higher
a better
detention
job. That's what it tells me. And the reason why.
Hey, if it's a similar percentage.
You're so retarded. I'm surprised you can operate a motor vehicle. So the way that things work, let me explain
higher
something to you.
Total number, but similar percentage means what?
Oh my
it means the other side of the equation increased in kind.
Let me explain to you very simply because you need baby terms. You need baby terms.
Bro, you're just not understanding the math on this. I'm trying to be really kind about it, but you're just trying to shut me down when I do.
I promise you don't. Let me explain something to you very basic, okay? You're gonna look like really fucking retarded. If you're a single bouncer, if you're a bouncer at a club and you are detaining people or you're checking people's IDs coming into the club, you only have 10 people per night. And then 4 years later, you have 100,000 people coming in. But you still remove a similar amount of people who should not be inside of the club. Is that a better or worse performance? Is it better or worse that you're a single bouncer still able to remove a similar percentage of people?
What? If it's not, you're not the bouncer in this case.
Yes,
if you're the bouncer's,
you're the
bouncer's manager.
Biden is the bouncer. No, Biden is the bouncer.
He's not deporting anybody. What are you talking about?
He is
the president. He's the bouncer's manager. He's the club manager.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Manager. Jesus Christ. Bad faith, by the way. You're not bad faith. The bouncer.
I'm not being bad faith. I'm just correcting the analogy. The
bouncer is still removing a similar amount of people given the dramatic increase in the number of people coming across. What does that tell you?
But it's also the bouncer's job to keep them from coming in when they're not supposed to.
Look at this bad faith. Is it harder to
maintain? It's not bad faith. You're being bad faith for trying to whittle into this weird yes or no.
No. Is it harder to maintain
Biden did
those
make
numbers?
It harder on him. Biden did make it harder on himself by letting more people in.
Did Biden by removing a similar amount of people after a massive increase in illegal crossings? Did Biden do a task that was harder than Trump? Why do you act like
that's a force of nature and not also a result of his policy?
You can't control people walking across the border.
Yes, you can. It's called border fucking security, you retard. That's the whole point of the border. Oh my God! You just said you can't stop people from crossing the border illegally? That is retarded.
Yes,
that is the core of your bad faith argument here.
No,
it is also the president's job to secure the border.
You understand that people are still crossing the border illegally, right?
Yes, but you can reduce it by being stricter at the border.
That's
why Trump did it twice.
No, that's why Biden did it, you fucking spurg. So I'll say one more time. I'll say one more time. I'll say one more time. I'll say one more time because you're really slow. If Biden was able to maintain a similar percent of expulsions with an increase in the number of people, is that a harder job or is that an easier job to do?
He made it harder on himself, yes.
Oh, he made it harder on himself, but he still maintained the same levels, no?
So similar but lower levels.
So this is your moment. This is your moment to not be bad faith. The bouncer sitting in front of the club, going from 10 people coming into their
this
bar,
bouncer's not in front of the club.
Shut the fuck up, you fucking loser. I'm not saying Biden was on the fucking border. You think you're good faith. I'm not talking about Biden sitting on the border. You fucking sperm.
Once they're in the club.
I'm an inch away from saying a slur because you are so fucking retarded. I'm talking about. I don't give a fuck. I'm talking about people coming inside of the country and Biden being able to maintain, even by your own argument, ignoring every other fact.
That's
and the
not
fact
the
that you
bouncer at
didn't
the door.
read the fucking thing. Shut the fuck up. I don't care.
I did read the thing. I just don't agree with their analysis on the thing.
Because you said specifically that it didn't say that Biden did anything at the beginning.
No, I didn't say that he didn't do anything. I said that he did. He shows that he did a bad job at the beginning.
You said
and then cranked up enforcement at the end.
Beginning. He only did things at the end.
Oh my God.
And it is literally like the second bullet point.
It is the second bullet point. That he didn't do a good job enforcing the border until the very end.
I'm a fucking permaban you if you keep on this fucking trend, dude. It's fucking insane.
I'm not being bad faith, bro. You're the one who's going so fucking ham about these lies.
You told me you read this and you did not. No, you didn't.
I read it.
Dude, just don't lie about this shit. It's really not that hard.
It illustrates, while trying to make an argument for Biden, it illustrates that he did not do enough at the beginning and did a very bad job at the border at the beginning.
You said explicitly in this report, it didn't say that he did anything until the end. That is complete bullshit.
That's not what I said.
Yes, it is.
But let me respond to your analogy.
We can run it back.
In this club, right? Border crossings would be where the bouncer comes in. The bouncer keeps people from coming in. There would be another bouncer maybe that is removing people once they get in. Biden had one bouncer. Hold on, stop.
Detention. I don't care.
Biden had one bouncer
You're a fucking loser.
Biden had one bouncer doing a essentially 10 times worse job, and then the other bouncer having to pick up the slack for him. That doesn't make Biden a better club manager.
What do you think border detention is?
It means Biden needed to hire a better bouncer at the door.
What do you think a border detention is?
So his bouncer at the front, at the middle of the club, didn't have to do so much work.
What do you think a border detention is? What do you think border detention is?
Border detention is when someone has already crossed illegally into the country, and you are now having to pay to detain them because you didn't stop them from crossing the border.
No, that's
illegally.
interior detention. What is border detention?
No. Interior detention is when they've gotten really deep into the country and they've already embedded into a community.
No, bro. Interior detention isn't when you're like 30 feet inside of the country. No, interior detention is when you're inside of the country. Border detention is while you're in the process of crossing. While you're in the process of crossing.
When you have crossed. We can't detain people who haven't crossed yet.
We can't detain people who are in the process of crossing. If you're climbing the fucking wall, we can detain you. Yes, we
that's
can.
that's not all
That's
border
in the
detention
process
is.
of that's
that's not all border detention is.
Yeah, obviously
the majority of
it
border
includes
detention
things being,
is.
You know what? I'm actually done with you. I actually don't care. That guy is so bad faith. Holy shit. Oh my god. Retard Spurg never unban bad faith. Holy shit, that's so fucking annoying. Oh my god, that's so fucking annoying. I hate, it's just, don't tell me you read something you haven't read. Don't tell me you've read something you haven't read. Please don't ever do that. Jesus Christ, that's so fucking annoying.